I decided to use this one, just easier. Good morning. I'm very grateful to have been invited to come and speak today, or share, I think of it more like sharing. The theme for this month is awareness, the gateway of awareness, I believe. And so today the topic is the main thing is to have the main thing be the main thing. So, you don't have to look far and wide these days to see that the world appears to be coming undone and falling apart at the seams, falling into a way of being that we wouldn't want in our own families, we wouldn't want in our own relationships, we wouldn't consciously choose it, but there it is. And the reading, thank you, Damien, for, on very short notice, learning that reading this morning, but that reading speaks so much to me because peace is Dan Millman's focus has always been peace, and mine has too. And I have evolved in my understanding of peace over the years. It used to be something I fought for, or it used to be something that I was angry that didn't exist, or it used to be something that I would tell people how important it was that they were like that, or it used to be something that I thought never was going to be possible. And that's really the collective understanding, mostly still to this day. If we truly understood, then we would act differently. If we truly understood that peace is a principle, it's a quality of the thing itself, it's the nature of life. It's not something to be fought for or ridiculed or to do any of the marching and storming around that we've done about it. It's something to live. It's something to reveal. It's something to come to understand through the practice of it. So peace, in the way I see it, peace is a principle, a fundamental quality of life. And if that is so, then its nature is our nature, because we know that, as Shirley said, we're made in the image and likeness of God. We're made from the thing itself, the thing that makes the stars and the suns and the puppies and the roses and the cycles of nature, and we're made from it for it. That means that peace is our peace. And if we don't have it in the world, it means we don't have it in ourselves. And if we don't have it in ourselves, that means we don't believe it's possible. And if we don't believe it's possible, then we believe it isn't. And we just cannot escape that kind of deductive reasoning. That's why I like that reading, because he speaks of the urgency to know what you're believing and what you're acting upon. In this amazing book, True Refuge, if I had a month, I would love to just sit in Sangha and with a bunch of us and just go through and read the gems here together and unpack them, because this book is extraordinary. But at some place in the book, she says, understanding is found in action. It's not found up here. We have to put it to use. And that's the good news. But it's also hard because it's so much easier to read a book. I was showing Reverend Mary this morning what my books look like, books that I like. They're all marked up. They're just like underlined and there's notes beside them. And it's easy to go, wow, look at how smart I am. I believe that. I know that. Wow, that's great. I'm well on the way. And then you close the book and you put it on the shelf and there you go, off to work. Get mad at the person that cuts you off in the parking lot and your boss or your secretary lets you down or whatever happens. And that's where we see who we really are. Ram Dass once said, oh, it's really great to be up here on the mountaintop. I mean, look at the view. You can see everything from up here. But I'd like you to come down with me, he said, to the car lot in the San Jose Valley and work down there with me for a day so you could know who you really are. You know what I'm talking about, right? I behaved badly on Friday and let one of my favorite teachers push me the wrong way. She didn't push me, I just went there by habit. But really underneath it, I was afraid for the path that she was on. And I took it out on anybody that crossed my path for about 5 minutes. And then I saw myself and I went, oh my God, this is what it looks like when it appears to be falling apart. But really, it's falling together. How can that be a falling together experience? Because I've given myself permission to see who I am in all of myselves. And we all have some different aspects of us. Aspects where we shine, aspects where we're wise, where we're compassionate, kind, and many other things. One of mine is judgmental or irritation when I see something not working the way I think it should. And, as a minister, we're not supposed to have those things, right? But in fact, I'm human, just like the rest of us. And when it appears to be falling apart, imagine with me that what's really happening is it's falling together. But whatever has to happen in that falling apart moment is required so that I wake up and become more aware of what I'm acting from. Not the good news story that I can tell you in class or in church or, but when I'm in the car lot of life, dealing with all of that coming and going and everybody's worries and doubts and fears and wishes and unmet needs and all that stuff. And there it shows up in our daily life. And that's the place where we need to discover who we are so we can choose to be the person that we really want to be. Because if we can't see it, we can't let go what's in the way and we can't become it. So you don't have to look far and wide to see the pain and the suffering and all of that stuff. But what if true refuge was the medicine needed? What if that pain and suffering is actually the perfect thing for that moment? If we believe that there's only one thing happening and that's God, and it's happening all the time in its fullness, its completeness, its wholeness, if that's all that there is, then that seeming to fall apart is all of it too. And so it must be here on purpose. It must be here for good. It must be like a lamp to show us. And in this book and in Dan's book, they talk about using those everyday moments to wake up. Refuge is sometimes it's a physical place, and sometimes it's an emotional state. It's sometimes a place you go to remember, like church or a class or your best friends or a walk with the puppy or getting on the floor with the grandbaby. Those are refuges. Those are places where you remember who you are, and all of the other extraneous stuff goes away. When you're gardening, for my son, it's when he's fishing. But when you're singing, when you're doing that thing that just lights you up, when you're cooking, when you're sailing, whatever. Those are physical places of refuge, as long as you don't take your story there with you. There's no good to be out there and worrying about the shore, worrying about what's back home, or what if it doesn't work tomorrow when you go to work. Then you diminish the effectiveness of that Shabbat experience, Sabbath, Shabbat. Why is it important? Because it provides us a refuge from what appears to be falling apart to actually remember, to restore ourselves, to renew our faith, to reconnect with the highest truth that says it's all one thing, it's all God. How do I find the God in this? How do I be my best self? What would love do now instead of throwing my energy all around in upset? So it's so important to see these gaps, these places where we're not who we want to be, but we have a sense of who we could be. So, here in this Center for Spiritual Living, in all centers for spiritual living, our assignment is to support people to find that gap, the highest truth you can imagine, and to find ways to experience it so that when the dragon comes marching up the road, you don't buy into that story because you've been investing in this one. It's about shifting attention from lack to love, from limitation to love. Do you know what I'm talking about? You know what that feels like, right? When we have this choice. And the difficulty is we're such automatic responders. We are habitual for the most case. And almost everything I do right now is about learning more effective ways to change. Because, like you, I have lots of habits that don't work for me. And so becoming aware, this is the thing, we have to become aware, not only of this great glory that is heaven that we talk about, this infinite presence. In this book, she talks about true refuge is presence. It's being totally available to life, being totally immersed in the moment, and yet not being of that moment. I remember Jack Canfield had a formula, and I was teaching seventh graders in Santa Rosa. I had like a 7-week program called I'm a Learner. This was 25 years ago. And most of the kids, it was one of those classes where most of the little gang members hung out with all of their clothes and their markings and all the things that they needed to do to let people know who they were. And my job was to not see them as those clothes and those markings, but my job was to see them as successful learners. So I had to learn to step over the condition to see the greater truth. So here we have the gap, how they're showing up and what's really true. They are children seeking love and to have a place in the world and to be respected. And so Jack Canfield's little slogan, his formula was what I used. E plus R equals O. And it works for anything that any of us face. event plus response equals outcome. So we may not be able to control the events that are happening out there in the world, but we sure as heck can control the way we're responding to them. Are we reacting or are we responding? I know it feels good to react. I know because sometimes when I witness myself in my feisty, irritated, resistant self, I see it and I don't want to stop because something feels good about that. I'm a bit embarrassed to say, but maybe you understand that state, you know? But what if it was just energy that was pent up in you? And what really feels good is that you're getting it out of you. What if that were true? Could you then find healthier ways to get it out of you? So I talked to my son about 3 hours later, after my little event with his daughter and wife. And thank heavens they're not here. I don't have to tell this story in front of them, although they know it. And my son is the most reliable person in my life. And he says, Mom, could you be a little kinder? It would really help. Just like that. Could you be a little kinder? It would really help. He didn't say, would you stop it? Would you get over that finally, for goodness sakes? He just asked for what was right, what was true, what was the highest value. Could I be a little kinder? It would help. And so, of course, I'd already told my daughter-in-law, I'm so sorry. I'd already hugged my granddaughter till we were laughing. You know, I'd done what I knew to do, but inside, what I did is I realized that I wasn't practicing my own philosophy. What I call refuge is peace first. That's what I call it. And it works so beautifully. It's a simple three little steps that change your focus from reacting to becoming aware to responding wisely. It works. I guarantee it. I guarantee that it works when you use it. And I guarantee that if you're practicing it and then you forget, it works by reminding you. And then you don't get to blame yourself anymore because you're choosing to be peaceful, and self-judgment isn't very peaceful. So you have to see yourself with kindness and compassion, which helps you see the other people around you with kindness and compassion. And the whole thing takes on a different tone. So, how to change from this to this? We have to become aware of not only where we are, but what has been promised to us. The main thing is to have the main thing be the main thing. So, what does that mean? Like, what is your staff? What is your talisman? What is your rock that you stand on in your life to help you weather those storms? What is it? Do you have it? Do you know what it is? And do you practice it? So for me, it's peace first. We have to become willing to change. It's nice to be aware. But really, this groan zone in between these two places is scary. And we are so comfortable, it's hard to. So we have to be willing. Why? How to get willing? Come and raise up our awareness of what this divine life really is. What was Jesus' main thing? What did Jesus say was his main thing? The main thing is to love thy God with all thy heart, soul, strength, and mind, and then love thy neighbor as thyself. That was his main thing. God first. Love thyself this way, and then it's easier to love those people that way. Science of Mind's main thing is change your thinking, change your life. You have the choice to shift from whatever this is going on over here to this. But you have to be aware, you have to be willing, you have to practice it. You have to keep your focus, you have to be courageous. You have to get support, because most of us can't do it at home by ourselves. That's why we come into community, to learn together. And we have to practice. It's not enough to read the book, check it off, and put it on the shelf. We have to see ourselves and not be afraid to say, I'm sorry, or could you help me? Or, you know what, that is not how I really feel. I did that because I was afraid to ask for what I wanted. Or I did that because I was afraid you wouldn't accept me otherwise. Or I did that because it's an old habit and I forget. We have to see ourselves for this to happen. And true refuge is the whole way that the universe lines up to support us. It brings us, the moment we say that we want to live here in this divine reality, the refuge starts showing up around us. Things that bring in peacefulness. In this book, there are 4 gates. I've got about 4 minutes or 5. The first is the search for refuge. That opens us to our own deep yearning. And you know, science says that most everyone on the planet has a deep yearning for a feeling, a state of peacefulness, which I see as refuge. But most people don't know how to get there because most people are stuck in a worldview that says there's always conflict, there's always somebody trying to gobble you up, you've got to be ready. Life is dangerous. And 30-something years ago, 1980, or maybe 40 years ago now, God knows, I was doing a radio show, and it was called The Good News Show, and I started the show every week with this thing. Towards the end of his life, somebody asked Albert Einstein, what is the most important question facing civilization today? And he said, is the universe friendly? And the answer to that question is what shows us what our life is going to be like. If we believe the universe is friendly, then our life reflects that. If we believe it's dangerous, our life reflects that. Our choice. So we seek refuge. We search for it. We yearn for it. And while we're there, we must go to the second gate, which is truth. Who am I really? How am I showing up? Who would I prefer being? We need to cultivate that mindfulness within us that has us learn to respond instead of react. We have to grab that reaction like an old friend and say, thank you. Thank you for showing up here. Like Rumi calls my great teachers, he calls them our precious friends. Those people that push your buttons. We must be glad for them. So there's the third gate, which is the gateway of love. There's no way to describe love, really. You only have to experience it. But the more we choose little moments to love instead of be distant, or little moments to be kind instead of to be right, or little moments to aspire to be the place where heaven and earth meet. Those little moments are like they go into this bank account so that when it hits the wall, you've got it. It's there, it's your refuge. You're building it. And, you know, science today has proven how that works. You know, I have 2 friends who are scientists, and something 25 years ago, I asked Josephine, she's a chiropractor, and she created a class for us called Body-Mind Connection. And I asked her how it works. And she said, well, here's how change happens. If you have a predominant pattern, like, you know, if somebody were to say, or you were to ask, what's my predominant energy level, my energy field, my nature. And somebody would say joy. And somebody else might ask, and they might say sadness. What she would say is whatever your predominant pattern is gets developed in your receptors in your brain, and those receptors for those things, because they're used a lot, get really plump and juicy, and they get really open and excited. And those other things that are, if you're really about sadness, those other things like joy and happiness, they kind of get dried out and shrivel up a little bit. And she said, so when you try to change, it's so foreign because there's no receptors for the new model. So when we try to change, when we know that we want peace, but we're practicing war in here with our beloveds or whatever, and we want to change that, we have to begin knowing that it's going to feel weird. It's going to be so different than our pattern, and we have to give ourselves some tools or some stones in our pocket to hold on to remind us, or some prayer or some image, so that we do it anyway. And then I asked Dawson Church last week, his new book is called Mind Matter, I think, and I asked him the same question. He said, well, here's how change works. When you think a new thought, it creates the beginning of a new neural pathway. It's like a new track in your brain, a new road to travel. And in the beginning, it's all wavy, and the image I had when he was talking, there's those rope bridges that go in the Andes between these mountains, and it's all like this, and it doesn't feel safe at all. And he said, but don't worry. The second time you think that thought, it's easier. And the third time, it gets easier. And what you're doing is you're building a path out in front of you that's going to serve you and support you as you get to the other side. That's what I'm talking about, the practice that helps us get to the other side. So the gateway of love leads to the last one, which is the gateway of awareness. And I want to end with that. I want to thank you for listening and feeling whatever you felt today. Each of us has a gift. And we don't get to give it unless somebody receives it. All right, so ask yourself this week, what's your main thing? And if you're not sure, talk to anybody else here and work it out. Come to a practitioner, come to a class, pick up my literature, read it. There's a table back there. So here's how this book ends. It's just so wonderful. It's a poem by Diane Ackerman called School Prayer. I thought it was so fitting since school starts next week. All the parents are so happy, and the grandparents. God love those children and those teachers. In the name of daybreak and the eyelids of morning, and the wayfaring moon and the night when it departs, I swear I will not dishonor my soul with hatred, but offer myself humbly as a guardian of nature, as a healer of misery, as a messenger of wonder, as an architect of peace. In the name of sun and its mirrors and the utmost night, and the crowning seasons of the firefly and the apple, I will honor all life, wherever and in whatever form it may dwell, on earth my home, and in the mansion of the stars. So let's do the inner work. I invite you, if you're comfortable, to close your eyes. A Christian hymn just popped into my head. Oh my goodness. Holy, holy, holy. You know how it goes. Oh God Almighty. Then it goes too high. Heaven and earth are filled with your glory. I haven't thought that thought or heard that hymn in years. But that's how Spirit works. It brings you exactly what you need when you need it. It is always here calling us forward into that next expression of ourselves, into that renewal and up-leveling of emerging in Spirit. My life is a gift from God. And what I do with it is my gift to God. And so I give thanks for this morning and all that appeared and all that was experienced and all that it took to get here and all that receives us when we leave. And I claim for myself and for each one here that I will not betray myself without instant forgiveness, without deep learning, and I won't waste any moment for blame and judgment and worry. That is my prayer. And so I give thanks. I give thanks for this center that nurtures each of us and provides the refuge, both physically and metaphorically, that place of peacefulness within ourselves that we learn here. I give thanks for all that fuels this community and all the good that it does in the world, and for each one of us to know that we are born on purpose to give our gift. And as we do receive. For heaven is earth through me and through you. I let it be so. So it is.